The world isn't trembling. It's bracing for impact. Alliances are being pushed to the brink. Trade has been weaponized. Even the map itself feels negotiable again. From frozen Arctic outposts to Europe's industrial heartlands, a single shadow now hangs over every capital, every factory floor, every negotiating table. Old friendships are being tested. Old rules are being torn apart. As America's traditional partners scramble to adjust, its longtime rivals watch calmly, almost amused, as the order they once feared begins to crack from inside. This isn't tension. It's the pressure that comes just before rupture.
Between the demographic aging going around the world and a reorientation of American strategic policy that long predates Donald Trump, we were always going to get to some version of where we are. And when you look at the European Union, which was optimized to, in essence, export to a globalized world, that model was always going to either break or change. And we just happen to now be at the moment. The hard part of my job is figuring out when things happen, not so much what.
What Zeihan really warning about isn't a sudden collapse, but an unavoidable reckoning decades in the making. Global population decline, combined with a fundamental shift in how the United States views its role in the world, has been pushing the system towards stress for years. Europe built its prosperity on a fully open global marketplace, but that foundation was never permanent. The shock today isn't what's breaking. It's that we've finally reached a moment when the fractures can no longer be ignored. What we just heard wasn't a forecast of chaos. It was a reminder that the ground has been moving beneath us for a long time. Demographics, strategy, and power were quietly reshaping the global order long before today's headlines. Now that slow, relentless pressure has found its release point. And when systems strain for too long, they don't whisper when they change, they snap. The next snap won't be subtle, diplomatic, or cautious. It will be loud, intentional, and decisive. And it begins in the far north, where ice, territory, and power converge. This is where the United States stops observing the storm and steps directly into it. America is no longer looking south, east, or west. Its attention is fixed northward, toward a frozen expanse that has suddenly become central to global power. The polar regions are no longer distant, empty, or irrelevant. They are the new front line of international competition, where control of movement, navigation, and the routes connecting continents will define the next era. This is where rivals are spending money, positioning assets, and preparing for a future in which access matters more than ideology. At the center of that northern reality sits Greenland. If global movement flows from the Arctic into Europe and beyond, Greenland is unavoidable. You don't go around it, you pass by it. Whoever controls the land and the surrounding waters holds a strategic choke point that cannot be ignored. From Washington's perspective, this is not theoretical. It's existential. Greenland isn't just large, it's enormous. Larger than Alaska by roughly a quarter, and nearly a fourth the size of the continental United States. Yet it remains tied to Denmark, a country with a small population, a modest economy, and a limited military. The United States does not believe Denmark can defend it. It does not believe Denmark can control it. Under long-standing principles of territorial sovereignty, control is not symbolic, it's practical. You must be able to defend the land, develop it, and inhabit it. By those standards, Washington argues Denmark has failed every test. And yet the expectation remains that the United States should spend hundreds of billions of dollars protecting a territory vastly larger than Alaska, entirely at American expense, while ownership remains exclusively Danish. From Washington's point of view, that isn't partnership. It's extraction. For generations, American money, resources, sacrifice, and innovation have underwritten European security. The free world hasn't been held together by speeches. It has been held together by American power. And now the message coming out of the United States is blunt. Respect is overdue. Greenland is being framed not as optional, but as essential, integral to global security and to America's own defense architecture, particularly the system linked to the Golden Dome. The fear driving this urgency isn't abstract. It's rooted in history. Once territory changes hands, it rarely reverts. The question Washington is asking is brutal but simple. If someone else moves first, what then? How do you undo it? Greenland's environment makes permanent occupation difficult, but not impossible. And once control shifts, the consequences are lasting. This is why the rhetoric escalates. This is why the language hardens. And this is why economic force becomes the weapon of choice. Following public remarks, Donald Trump turned to his primary communication channel and issued a sweeping declaration, long, unrestrained, and unmistakable. The core message was clear. The United States has subsidized Denmark and Europe for decades without fair compensation, and that era is ending. World peace, he argued, is at stake. Greenland, he claimed, is vulnerable, and only the United States has a capacity to secure effectively. The statement named Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland, accusing them of creating a dangerous situation through their actions in Greenland. According to this view, an unsustainable level of risk has been introduced and immediate action is required. That action took the form of tariffs. Beginning February 1st, 2026, a 10% tariff will be applied to all goods from the named countries entering the United States. By June 1st, that figure would rise to 25%, and it wouldn't stop there. If Greenland remained under Danish ownership, pressure would escalate further, pushing tariffs to levels rarely seen between allies. These penalties will remain until a deal was reached for the full purchase of Greenland. No final price has been announced. Rumors circulate. Figures are whispered, but the economics remain unclear because this isn't a normal transaction. Territories rarely change hands. Entire countries almost never do. What is clear is that the tariffs are real, immediate, and sweeping. The scale of trade involved is enormous. Germany alone represents the largest share of imports among the targeted countries, followed by France, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Norway. Combined, this amounts to hundreds of billions of dollars annually. A 10% increase alone adds tens of billions in costs. At higher levels, the burden becomes staggering. But here's the critical reality. Foreign governments don't pay these costs. American consumers do. American businesses do. Prices rise. Inflation accelerates. And this happens precisely as the White House pushes for aggressive interest rate cuts. The central bank, watching inflationary pressure build, resists. The result is internal economic tension, layered on top of an international confrontation. And that's only half the story. These countries aren't just trade partners. They are treaty allies, members of NATO. Greenland itself falls under that alliance, which means the United States is effectively demanding a territorial transfer from within the very organization it leads. Economic pressure is being applied not to adversaries, but to partners. The response has been predictably hostile. No one is applauding. No one is conceding. Greenland has always been Danish, and Europe is rejecting the idea that strategic necessity alone justifies transfer of sovereignty. Historically, the United States maintained extensive military infrastructure across Greenland. Bases existed. Access was secured. But now the ambition has expanded. Massive investment is planned for systems designed to detect, deter, and potentially strike. For those systems to function at full capacity, geography matters, angles matter, positioning matters, and Greenland sits at the center of it all. The consequences ripple outward. Exporters face collapsing demand. Consumers seek alternatives. Margins shrink. Losses mount. Industry strain, and governments are forced into impossible choices: absorb economic damage or surrender sovereignty. At the center of all of this lies a question no one wants to ask out loud. Can NATO survive this? Not because Europe wants out, but because America may no longer see value in being the guarantor. The message is unmistakable. Protection was given freely for too long, and that era is over. What comes next is uncertain. What is undeniable is that we've entered uncharted territory. This isn't tanks crossing borders. It's leverage crushing economies, an economic war replacing a military one. And if these measures extend beyond June, the damage won't be symbolic. It will be structural. This is escalation, deliberate, calculated, and irreversible. And once escalation begins, there is no clean reset button.